Hello, my name is Rosemary Paz, and I made my observations from South Fairbanks. My National Weather Service location is the Fairbanks International Airport, and I made my observations from September 10th to September 14th. Oh, sorry. Okay. The time that I took my observations was around 5 p.m. Sometimes I couldn't just get around to doing it exactly at that time, and I made some of my observations a couple of minutes later. On September the 10th, or on September the 13th, I actually made my observation at 4 p.m., which was an hour earlier from what I was regularly used to. My air temperature figure here is kind of broken down, but I'm going to talk about some of the observations that I made for those days. If I can get it to look a little better, I'll just talk about it. So on the 10th of September, I got my observational temperature at 43 Fahrenheit. I went outside and there was clear skies. So it turned out to be a pretty clear day. On the Beaufort scale, I would have to report it at a 1 for the clear skies. My maximum temperature for that day was 52 degrees, reaching a pretty impressive low at the 30s on the other side of that high spectrum. Officially, the day was around the average of 50 Fahrenheit, and there was something really extremely strange about the weather that day. Pretty clear skies. I thought that the most particularly strange part of that day was the fact that I got such a low reading at the end of the day there. And I thought that was kind of peculiar. The wind seemed to be moving at an average of 2 miles per hour around there, from 2 to 3. On the 11th, there was noticeably a lot more precipitation. You can even say severe precipitation. The winds were traveling from the north. My initial and observational temperature was at 46 Fahrenheit. The lowest that I got that day was in the 50s. At one point the highest it reached was in the 50s Fahrenheit, and it fell all the way to the 30s again, which I still thought was particular in many ways, but a lot more appropriate, I think, for the 11th and the day before, which was the 10th. The skies were also clear, and again, I rated that at number 1 on the Beaufort scale. The winds again seemed to be going 2 to 3 miles per hour from the north, and the National Weather Service declared the official temperature of the day to be 49.9, which I thought wasn't very far off from my first observation. Let's see if I can just move this a little bit. It's gonna be difficult. On Wednesday, the temperatures seem to have changed a little bit. The first Monday or the 10th and the 11th kind of seem to be going pretty steady and consistent, but on Wednesday, they changed a little bit. It went from 40s to an observational temperature at the 52s. There was no precipitation. There was no change in the scale. Northwest winds, I got my max and my minimum at a 57 to 29, which was probably the lowest observation at 29 that I had gotten for the 3 days. I thought that it was kind of strange that I got down to the 29s, because what made this day noticeably different from the others was that it kind of seemed to be the warmest day, and I thought that it was interesting that my lowest was at a 29th. The national weather got an average at 51.2, which I thought was kind of shocking since I got the maximum at 57. Maybe it's because being in South Fairbanks makes it a little bit warmer being inside of town. But I did think that it was kind of concerning that I got such a different number for the national weather, which is again reported from the Fairbanks International Airport. This day I kind of felt like I may have made some mistakes on my measurements. It was obviously the warmest day out of the week. You could walk outside and feel that it was the warmest day of the week. And even though I did get a high reading or a warmer reading for this day, I think it showed to be too high from the national weather. It was at 51, so I did feel a little bit less confident about my readings for that day. Okay, on the 13th, my observational temperature was at 50. My maximum for that day was 53, and my lowest temperature was at 26 Fahrenheit. The national reading was at 44.7. I again thought this day was at a different scale of 1. And even though the day reached the 50s, it felt like the coldest of the days. It even was a little bit foggy, kind of frosty, just kind of like foreshadowing the beginning of the end, the winter. Where I remember walking outside that day and feeling like, this was definitely significantly the beginning of what could be the cold weather, which was kind of weird because the first 2 days of the weather this week were consistent, and then we kind of just went through this little roller coaster on these past 2 days. On the 14th, my observational temperature started at 49th. My highest was 53 Fahrenheit, and my lowest was 24, which was, I think, really, really cold. And I honestly think that I also may have made a mistake because it did not feel this cold. There was clouds. It felt warmer, which was also, I thought, strange because I got a low 24 reading for that day. There was light precipitation, Beaufort scale at a 1. The average of the wind was 2 miles per hour for the wind. The national average temperature for that day was 47.3, and that day there was some light rain in South Fairbanks. I kind of don't remember if it was raining in other parts of town, but there was definitely some rain in this part of town. And there was for the beginning of the week, I thought there would be no significant changes in the weather, but you did see that Wednesday was significantly warmer, and then it kind of felt like it was going to be warm for a while, and Thursday got cold again. So my barometric pressure measurements were a little bit concerning this time. On the 11th, the national reading was at 1008, and mine was 2010, which was pretty close. But on the 12th, the national average was reading was at 1007.1, and mine was at 1000. On the 13th, the national reading was at 1002.8, and mine was at 1010.1. I think that for those days, I think the biggest problem with my barometric pressure numbers was that I left my barometer at home, or I misplaced my barometer, and I had to use a barometer on my phone. So I think that might have explained those readings that were off. I left that at school. On the 14th, the national the national barometric pressure was at 1010.4, and mine was at 1010.2, which was again a lot closer, probably because I was actually using the appropriate barometer, not the one on my phone. So I was obviously doing something incredibly wrong for a couple of those days, and it was just, I think, the difference in using the right equipment and the wrong one. Now we're gonna do a quick look at these weather maps. This is Monday, September 10th. You could see that there is winds with low pressure from the Bering Sea. You can see that there is definitely some rain showers, rain here, a little bit of snow even, right with the rain. So the temperature was normal in Fairbanks that day. Tuesday, September 11, 2012, you could see the low pressure in the north from the south. Not very cloudy, but there was some snow in the south parts, as you can see. Of Fairbanks, which explains why there was like a foreshadowing of temperature change going on. Wednesday, September 12th, which was what felt like the warmest day, you can see an increase in pressure and the low pressure from the south. You can see that there was some drought covering us here. There are some clouds, and that day there was also some rain, which you can see along these parts. On Thursday, you could see the low pressure systems in the east. In Fairbanks, the barometer showed that it was at 1,002 millibars. You can see that there were showers and definitely more rain showing everywhere. Some fog and rain in these areas. Just a lot more visible clouds showing along those days. Finally, on Friday, September 14th, you could see a lot of rain in the interior region as opposed to it being more scattered the day before. Fog in the North Brooks Range and Fairbanks had a rain, fog, and clouds. It was a colder day. There was even some light snow in the south of Fairbanks, which kind of also signified for the beginning of the snow in the upcoming days. So that was my weather readings for the week. I thought it was a really interesting week because what I first thought would be a consistent week kind of changed and turned into a little roller coaster there at the beginning, and we could just definitely start to see the colder days of the fall just approaching us in Fairbanks and the changes that are happening along these weather maps.